Welcome to this third video in Introduction to Python, and now we will be looking at classes. And some may say, oh, this is a bit early for learning classes, but I'm convinced that doing classes early will help you in learning programming, and I also think that one of the central aspects is actually learning object-oriented programming, which is one of the fundamental techniques for developing programs. We looked last time at some of the basic types and expressions of Python, where we wrote a bit of calculation with variables, and in this video we'll be using that and exploring a bit more about Python. So the first thing we're going to do is think about an object that we see in front of us. You're probably sitting in your room or your cafe or anything in your environment that could be represented as it could be a noun. For example, you could say, I'm looking at a table now, I'm looking at a person at the cafe now, I'm looking at my desktop computer, or anything else. And I'm gonna hold to that and remember that, and when we write our class we're gonna see how we can use our item that we thought about. So basically, a class in Python or in any other language is usually taught as a template for creating objects. And what are objects, you say? Well, I'll let you know, and I'll show you now. When we create something called an object in a language, we're actually creating some sort of entity that can have attributes and something that we can interact with programmatically. So if we had this simple variable when we said name, we said like Joe, we're only able to use name as a variable, and the only way to use it is by, for example, printing it, adding it to some number or to another expression, to another variable. What we want to do now is demonstrate something called a class. We're going to do this by opening up idle, create new file, and we're going to simply just write class followed by something that is usually a noun. So if you remember what you actually thought about that you have in your room, you might have a table or a person or anything else. So I'm going to say that I have a person here at my cafe. So I'm going to go ahead and write class person, parentheses object and parentheses colon. And then I'm going to go ahead and write def init self colon like this, and I'm going to write pass. So what we've done now is basically create a class called person. And if I were to write person like so, I would actually create an instance of person and assign it to the left hand side p, and p will then be an object. So as we learned about the print function earlier, we can actually use it to print regular objects, just as we wrote in the first video, hello tutorial. We will also be able to write p, which is an object of the type person, or of the class person. So what is the output of P? What will print actually display? Well, I'll show you. I'm going to first of all save the file, and then I'm going to go to run module. Now we see the effect of actually writing an object. We have hello tutorial, and we also have something here that's very much like not that something that we could understand at the moment. But this is actually the output, the representation of the object P, or the variable P. And I'm gonna go back to our class here and say, okay, if I have a person, I could probably say that this person probably has a name, and this person might also have a skin color, a length, or a weight, or anything else that we would associate with a person. If you, for example, thought of a desktop computer or table or anything else that you had in your room, think about the different attributes that you could assign, that could associate with that object, and see if you can write a class and assigning it attributes. The way we assign attributes in Python is by assigning it variables that are inside the class scope. So if I would say a person has a name, I could say self.name is Peter. I'm going to change that to single quotes as well. I'm going to remove the past because we don't need it now, as we have something. When we say self.name Peter, we're actually saying that any object that comes out of person will have the name variable assigned to it with the value Peter. So will that actually be displayed now when I do print P? Well, let us see. No, it does not. So how can we then display the value of name? Well, I'm gonna add another print statement here to say p.name. This is the way you access variables belonging to an object. So again, p is an object, name is an attribute assigned to that object. And I would also say associated is much a better description of what actual name is. So if we try to run this again, we expect to see Peter. Yes. Perfect. So that finishes this third lesson of Introduction to Classes. And think about your object and see if you can make a similar class description like this with one variable or many, and see if you can print them out. And we'll be looking at classes a bit more in the upcoming videos.